Hey guys, it's Nerdwino. Do you know science streams on Twitch? They're amazing biologists. Balint and Lida have PhDs in biology and they stream a ton of awesome content on Twitch every week. I got to sit down with the lovely Balint, one third of science streams. He talked about his career in science, his love and passion for outreach and education, and how he got into streaming. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I know it's taken me a little while to put it out. It was back in April when we chatted, but I hope you enjoy it anyway, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. So there we go, 5x5. All right, we're all set.
And we're setting a record too.
And you are setting records, but you're very naughty. That wasn't why I invited you here. No, but so Science Streams, welcome in. For those of you that don't know Science Streams, he is a recently minted partner on Twitch, January 27th, maybe?
Yes, sir.
And a wonderful science communication streamer, PhD in molecular and systems biology, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And a lovely human who I got to meet last year at TwitchCon. And we will be having a reacquaintance at the next one. In Las Vegas, no less.
That's right.
So, thank you very much for being here. I know you're incredibly busy. As I said to Astro Canuck a couple of weeks ago when we had him on, I realized the offers are pouring in for sponsorship opportunities, and you're very busy dealing with, Adidas and Nike and all of the big companies. And not mention being a new dad, trying to find time to sleep. So
more of a Puma guy in New Balance myself.
New Balance. Fair enough.
Holding out for those.
But no, I really do appreciate you spending time here. All joking aside, it's very nice of you to come and spend a few minutes chatting with us.
I'm happy to be here.
Good. So we have a little tradition that we just started. So Astro Canuck was our first guest, and you're our second. But we have a little segment called Know Your Partner. And it's just rapid fire questions, and you just answer the first thing that comes into your mind. There are no gotcha questions, I don't think, although there's one or two that might be a little unfair, but we'll see. So the first question for you, Science, is cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Dogs, okay. Who's your favorite streamer?
Irish John Games.
Nice. Apples or oranges?
Oranges.
Nice. What's your favorite time of day?
Evening.
Evening. Why?
Because I'm awake. I hate evenings.
What is the most memorable stream you ever had?
I think when we looked at the Hell Ant, that sample was probably the coolest one that we've ever seen. So that's a 90 million year old precursor species of most ant species today. I think that was definitely the coolest one.
Very nice. What's your favorite sandwich?
Hungarian salami with Hungarian wax pepper and a little bit of cheese on top.
What kind of bread?
White bread.
White bread. All right. You're going to Antarctica for a 6-month research project, but they're only going to let you take one book. Which book are you taking?
Going to an island?
You're going to Antarctica for a 6-month research project, but you only get to take one book. Which book?
Oh, wow. Now that one may have actually stumped me. I don't know.
We can come back to it.
Because right, is it going to be a research book that helps guide my research question? Is it going to be one that keeps me from getting bored? Is it going to be for just like goofy funsies? That's a hard question there, Nuri. He said no gotcha questions, Chad.
That isn't I thought the who's your favorite streamer was the only kind of.
Well, I know what I should have said, which was obviously being here, but
no, that wasn't the intention at all. I'm
glad Jern lives in both of our hearts very closely.
Absolutely, 100%.
But I don't know. I've been really on a Witcher kick. I've been really enjoying that book series. It's very rich in the descriptive literature, so I'd probably go on that front, even though it's probably not my favorite book of all time. But I've just been really enjoying it.
Yeah, fair enough. So as a follow-up question to that, paper books or ebooks?
Paper,
yeah.
I'm a monster.
That's correct.
I prefer the feel, the smell, the texture.
Oh, I get it. Peanut butter, smooth or crunchy?
Smooth.
Favorite video game, if you have one?
Which system or just in general?
Yeah, whichever. Pick one. It doesn't matter.
In general, Onimusha 3.
All right.
You are a samurai in feudal Japan fighting demons that get sent forward to modern day France, and then a French officer gets sent back in time to feudal Japan.
Very nice. Sounds like fun. I might have to give it a try. And what system was it? Did it run on?
PS2.
PS2. All right. Tea or coffee?
Tea. I have to. My blood pressure. I have to go on the tea front now.
I know. Yes. No, I understand. Best movie ever made?
The Prestige, starring Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. Although very close second place, cinematic masterpiece, The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser, Rachel Vosloo, and Arnold Wise from 1999.
Okay. Favorite scientist, dead or alive?
E.O. Wilson.
Okay. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Okay, that's correct. Favorite city?
Budapest.
Nice. If you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One song for the rest of my life. Godsmack When Legends Rise.
Oh, all right, interesting. One place in the universe you want to visit before you die? Be on Earth, could be wherever.
Like Earth or outside of Earth?
You choose. Up to you.
Up to you. Egypt.
Nice.
I always loved ancient Egypt, so seeing the pyramids and mummies and whatnot would be really cool.
Have you been? You haven't
No.
been? No, yeah,
No.
no, me neither. It's on my list. Yeah, for sure. That's it. You passed. Very good. It's a pass-fail exam, so.
I don't know. There's some anger in the chat.
Oh, there's anger? Yeah, but they're always angry, so you know. Okay, well, we'll unpack their anger. If you guys have questions for science, feel free to pop them in the chat. We'll ask them as we go along. We'll try and get to, I suspect the anger is over The Mummy as being like one of the best movies ever.
Well, you asked for best movie, not favorite movie.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's your answer, man. You're like they don't get a vote. This
No. Favorite would be The Mummy, but best, I mean, look, The Prestige is a mind grenade. I have to watch it like 3 times to catch all the little. I see new stuff every time anyway. It's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thanks. That was just a bit of fun. I appreciate you participating. Hopefully everybody knows you a little better now. The cats are going to be angry? Yeah, the cats probably are going to be a little angry.
In my defense, I grew up on dogs, and I would love to have a dog. We just, up until like a year ago, none of us were at home, and then, there was not a big yard, and so my best friend is Noodle, the cat, right? So she's my favorite animal ever. But again, if I had to choose, I'd want a dog instead.
Yeah. No, there are specific instances, right, of like a cat or a dog where you're like, oh, that's the one. But
exactly. Yeah.
So I thought it might be interesting to go back to the beginning. Where did your interest, I know you come from a sort of a learned family and doctors and things, but where did your interest in biology start? Where did it come from?
So that was my dad's fault. He was a research scientist at medical school down in Georgia called Mercer University School of Medicine. And he had a lab where he was studying cancer cells and ways to, like it was particular breast cancer, to find therapeutics. And so he would bring me in, I was like 7 or 8, to play with his cell culture. So I had my own little dishes of cell culture in the lab that I could pipette and learn how to move around. And he did show me how to collect blood from mouse pups. So and that was the moment that I decided I didn't want to do mammalian research. It's very horrifying how you get blood from a mouse pup, but I just was really hooked on the science component and like the discovery, and I really like puzzles. And even as a kid, one of my favorite shows was Columbo.
Yeah.
So like the detective mystery. So it was like getting to do real life detectiving. So ever since I was a little kid, and I always, as every kid wants to be a marine biologist or work on the African savannah with animals, that was also on the same front as well.
Yeah, and then so then obviously you worked hard in high school and didn't spend all your time in the swimming pool and made it to undergrad.
Yeah, and so in undergrad, so the decision had been made for me that I was supposed to go to medical school.
Uh-huh.
And in medical school, you have to have lab experience to apply. And so I applied for a lab in the beginning of freshman year, and the professor was like, "Why don't you wait till the beginning of next semester? Let's make sure you get good grades." And so I got good grades, and he's like, "Fine, you can join." So it was host parasite relationships using fruit flies and parasitic wasps as a model organism, studying the immune response, how the immune response worked on a cellular level and a behavioral level. And I worked there until senior year when I graduated, and worked an additional year as a lab tech. And so we published several papers ranging from science, current biology, PLOS One, and more. We looked at differences in we looked at one Drosophila Suzuki that's still really cited. It was agricultural pest. It feeds on fresh fruit. So how to use wasps as a biocontrol mechanism for that. We looked at the immune response on a cellular level, and then behavior stuff as well. And so in my gap year between undergrad, it was supposed to be medical school. I was applying to med school and grad school. I did the med school interviews. I got in. I did the grad school interviews and got in. And I was like, well, Lita had already chosen Dartmouth, and she was up in graduate school at Dartmouth because she was 1 year ahead of me. And so we're like, all right.
So you guys were already, just sorry to interrupt, but you guys were already together before undergrad?
Yeah. Well, so we were together. So she joined the same lab as I did. So for those of you who don't know, Lita is the much better half of science streams, or better third, as it were. So she was getting her master's in public health down in Emory, and she joined the lab the same year I joined as a freshman. And so it was that transition between senior year and the gap year is when we started dating. So we were friends a long time before that. And then she chose Dartmouth, and it was like, well, I can apply to medical school there as well, or we can do grad school. And I did a bunch of shadowing, and I had found that I didn't like the doctoral work as much as I thought I would have, because there was a lot of I was a swim coach for many years. I thought I'd be good at pediatrics, but there were so many parents who weren't taking care of their kids, where I was like, I really don't like this. Let me go. I think I like the research side of things better. So much to my parents' dismay, I went to graduate school instead of medical school.
Interesting. Okay, so after you'd broken your parents' heart, how was your, so you followed the much more traditional path. So I didn't. I did a bunch of other things in between undergrad and grad school. I think there was 6-7 years in between. How was your experience in grad school? Was it, I'm just curious. Did you find it easy? Did you find, I really struggled, obviously, because I was coming back to academia, but maybe you just sailed straight through. Were you more research focused, or?
So Dartmouth was an interesting place. We had a core curriculum the first year, and you did 3 rotations. So that means you basically did a little, a 9-week interview in a lab, right? So you worked in a lab for 9 weeks and tried a second lab and tried a third lab. And then you pick at the end which one fits. And it's usually dependent on funding and if you both find it as a good fit. During that time, you're also taking the core courses. And first term of the core course was the kind of questions where you were having to think about stuff. Like, it was design an experiment. I'm like, all right, great, I can do all that. Second term was memorize a bunch of pathways. I'm like, oh God, this is exactly what I hate. I'm not Wikipedia, nor do I intend to be. But it was fine. And then you got to pick 3 modules as well that you could do later on. And then you join the lab and you had to do 3 elective courses. And the electives, Nerduino, you could pick either upper level undergrad biology, or you can pick the graduate level courses. And the grad courses were like, you hear bioinformatics, and you're like, oh, great, that's going to be awesome. And it was bioinformatics from 10 years ago.
Oh, really?
It was like not up to date stuff. And so Lita had taken that, and I was like, that sounds terrible. So I did undergraduate levels, and the courses were, I didn't learn a single thing in 6 years. It was much more that it was 12 to 14 hour work days of doing experiments, of doing the grinding, of trying to identify neuroscience, like the neuro pathways of behaviors, both from the brain to the ovary, so how the brain connects to the ovary in a fruit fly, how they perceive parasitic threats, how they change their behaviors, what genes are responsible for it. That's much more what I was studying, and it was just day in, day out, to the point where it was like the mental health was not considered a thing, right? We were also told that if you're gonna do these, like we were both told that grad school is not a place to learn, that you should have learned in undergrad, and that you can learn when you're a postdoc. Now, the same professor told our postdocs that they should have learned in grad school. So it was much more like a factory farm style mentality in our lab. So that was our experience.
So what was your like your passion? What was your research? What were you actually interested in? What did you?
So I was really interested in how social learning occurs in insects and what the neuroscience is behind it. So I like to figure out what is the molecule on the genetic level responsible for our behavior that you can test on the organismal level. So like there are labs that looked at a single protein in a dish for 6 years. Really cool, really important. Bores me to death. So I like it if I can see a behavior and try to figure out what's causing that behavior. And we got to the point where you can activate like a neuron, and in the absence of a stimulus, elicit the behavior. Right. And so like that was the goal for me, is trying to figure out what is that connection between perception of a threat and what all happens inside the body of this animal. Both, again, like what genes are turned on and off, what neurons. That's my favorite part, and that was the real passion behind it. So like social interaction, which is why I got interested in ants too. It was like the logical follow-up. All of a sudden, how do you identify, like, great social behavior in fruit flies is great, but they're not the most social animals.
Yeah.
So what's the next level up that's not a mammal? And those were ants or bees. And so that was the kind of the choice that came.
Interesting. So this is kind of jumping a little bit ahead, but Coffee Rock said, what kind of work do you do now?
So now I'm at the Genetic Society of America. And so we run a bunch of professional development events and programming for young scientists, as well as putting on internationally recognized scientific conferences. So we just had one in Chicago at the Fly meeting. We have the Worm meeting in Scotland coming up in June. We've got this one called the Allied Genetics Conference in next April, and that's all the big scientific communities coming together. You're talking fruit fly, mammals, zebrafish, worm, fungus, all, and just like spreading of knowledge. And so it's helping young scientists frame their path, as well as helping existing scientists. And it's a fun way of bringing science to more people. It's like, it allows me to pursue also like being a science communicator and, making science more accessible to more people.
Yeah. And did you do a postdoc after grad school, or did you go straight into the SciComm stuff?
Yeah, so I did a 3.5-year postdoc at UPenn in ant genetics and epigenetics. So we use leafcutter ants to try to figure out, leafcutter ants are amazing. There's 10 different castes, and they have different tasks in the colony. They look different, they act different, but they're genetically near identical. And so the question is, what are the genes that control a soldier to make them behave like a soldier and not like a nurse, and vice versa? And so like the big kicker experiment was we were able to make a soldier behave like a nurse, which they never do. So a soldier ant will never pick up a baby and move it around. But if you turn off a single neuropeptide in the brain, they start behaving like a nurse, and they'll pick up and start doing brood care.
Oh, nice.
If you turn up that neuropeptide in a nurse, she'll stop brood caring and she'll start behaving like a soldier, which is really, really wild to me. Such a thing can exist like that.
I can think of a few humans where that might be useful, actually.
So it's always the difficulty, right, of inferring how much we can take from the biology side, especially with ants. There's that is historically ridden with controversy because of the term caste and position in social structure. Yeah. So it's always that little addendum of we can take some genetic information, but you don't want to lean too much insight into it.
So just to follow up on that, so Volcano Doc had another question, but Gwendolyn P says, will the soldiers be better nurses because of their size?
So the soldiers' mandibles are built to cut. So to give you an example, they can bite through human skin like a hot butter knife through butter. Like that is it. They bite so deep. Like the only reason I would notice when they bit me is because I was trailing a thing, like a pool of blood behind me leaving the lab. So they are aggressive little guys or gals, I suppose. They're all ladies except for the males, and we never work with any males. They have the unfortunate effect of sometimes when they pick up brood, they will cut through them, and you will see the brood just pop open, and like the internal fluids just go everywhere. And it's again not a function of their size, but they have serrated jaws and mandibles, and so they're built to cut. So they're not built just to lift things gently. And so it didn't happen all the time, but there were several instances where you'd see like, oh, and she looks confused. Like,
yeah, do they just kind of shrug and they're like, "Oh well, I guess."
No, because like then when they pops, the cuticle or the skin of the larva is covering the mandible, and I'm like, I don't know what happened here,
right? That's funny. So Volcano Doc said, "How did you make the jump to psychom from that?"
So when I was in grad school, and I guess even back to undergrad, in undergrad we did a bunch of activities for local high school students. High school students would come into the lab and we'd show them like how the organisms and just get them up close and personal. Like, no, anytime I say parasitic wasp, people would get scared, right? And the first question was, even if when they saw them, and they were tiny, they looked like sugar ant size. Like we're talking super tiny. They're like, first question was, can they sting me? Yeah. Right. And it's like they can't sting you because they're based on these like larval infections, but you're immediately learning, right? You're immediately getting the kids to learn.
Sure.
And so like showing them the fruit flies, the dissections, the microscope. I'd volunteered in my chem class we did this chemical reaction where you made methane bubbles and you dip a cone into methane and blow it up in the air. You'd have this big bubble shoot up. And so you'd touch it with a candle and poof, big fiery explosion, right? The kids love that. And so in grad school, we didn't really have that much of an opportunity. We were actually told actively to not volunteer our time because it was a distraction. So what did Balint do? Balint goes online and he finds this organization called Skype a Scientist. And it's still around today. They don't use Skype anymore. They use Zoom, but it's essentially a matchmaking program where you get to be connected to a classroom anywhere in the world who's interested in a certain field that you're an expert in. And you can sign up as an undergrad, grad student, postdoc, professor, formerly in the science fields, like whatever. And so I would do those like Zoom and Skype chats, and we had little PowerPoints ready, and the kids would ask questions, and that was always a fun time. And I would continue that in my postdoc as well, much to the chagrin of my professor. Then I also actually joined the organization I'm in now, the Genetic Society of America. They have an early career leadership program. So if anyone's in graduate school or a postdoc wants to join, like we have open applications, and there was the opportunity to do volunteering there as well. So one thing we did was a Capitol Hill Day virtually. So we met with lawmakers.
Oh, nice.
In Washington to try to convince them to fund scientific research, like an emergency COVID package. Of course, that was always really interesting because you could kind of tell the political leanings of the person you met with, depending on if you met with them or their secretary, and if they turned their camera on or not. That was very strange. It was a very unique and surreal experience. But we did outreach there as well. We did write-ups to make on scientific topics to make them more accessible. And then when I was a postdoc before COVID hit, we had, again, high school students visit and middle schoolers visit the lab. And with ants, right, you open up a box and there's a colony in there. Most kids were really excited by that. Yeah, they were a little bit nervous.
Right.
And all of a sudden it was like, but tell me more. But they were also like there were a fair number that were also grossed out, and it took them a little bit to come around. But,
well,
so it's been part of what I've done for a long time.
We need bankers and plumbers and stuff as well, right? Not everyone can be a biologist, I guess.
Yeah, of course.
We have to grow some people out.
No,
Uh,
everyone can be a biologist, but not have to work in a lab. Everyone can have that curiosity.
for sure, for sure. Uh, so how did you get into Twitch then after, obviously you were into the psychom, you were being a little bit discouraged from pursuing that in the lab you were in. So how did you and Lita end up deciding to stream on Twitch?
Yeah, so we were dissuaded from doing it in our grad school lab. In postdoc, there really wasn't anything for a little while, but then COVID hit, and Lita and I had been doing virtual school visits and visiting schools in person in our area. So independent of the university setting, we did some school visits to. There were some high schools in the area. There were two in particular in Philadelphia. One was for lower income students, and one was just for anyone. Anyone could go to that high school. And so we had a bunch of school visits lined up, and everything shut down. And in these
Oh,
school visits, when we did go, we would bring some like preserved animals that the kids could look at and learn about. And so when COVID hit, I'd already been watching Twitch beforehand, like gamers primarily, right? Like, and it's because I had some friends who were like, "Hey, I have a Twitch channel. You should check me out." And I was like, "You're a professional video gamer?" And I thought it was only for like professional Halo shooters.
right,
They
right,
got sponsored,
yeah.
right? And no, it was like my friend Katie, and she's like painting herself purple on stream because she made a charity goal. I'm like, I don't understand, in the immortal words of Jern, but I'm like, this is great. Let's continue this, right? And then I was on a raid train one day, and we met paleontologizing. So Danny
yeah.
Anduza,
Uh-huh.
and he's there, and he's a paleontologist, and he's talking science. We're like, this is really good stuff, and it actually became an event for us. So Lita's best friend, who goes by the unofficial soup in chat, I'm sure you've seen him.
Uh-huh.
He's quite naughty when he shows up. They weren't able to chat because of our long work hours, so we'd all hang out in Danny's stream, and it felt like we were hanging out, but then learning too. And so it was like a really cool atmosphere. And we're like, you know what? Maybe we can do something like this. And the something was, we're still doing virtual school visits. Let's try to bring the ants to the kids. And so we had the leaf cutter colony set up. And so I would turn on the camera on my phone, for those who remember who were there in the original days, and it was just beyond the leaf cutter ants. And you would just see them working all day. That was the stream. It was Monday through Friday for like 10 hours. And chat actually identified a new species of parasitic ant using the stream.
No way.
So it turned out that leafcutter ants, we didn't know had any parasitic animals.
Yeah.
We knew Acromymex, a close relative of Atacephalotes, had these parasitic ants. And all of a sudden, one day on the stream, this giant ant comes walking across the camera. And I wasn't looking because I was doing some other work, but folks clipped it. This was ours, Glenn. This was back in the day before it was Science, it was B Cacho. So it was the first letter of my first name and our last name, because it was just me futzing around. And so some people clipped it, and we looked at it, and we're like, that doesn't look like a leafcutter ant queen, because the body shape is all wrong. And so we sent it to the world's leading expert on leaf cutters, where we got these original specimens from. And he's like, that is a parasitic ant that essentially goes in, hides in the colony, lays eggs, reproduces, and then leaves. And so we were seeing it move between nests to continue laying and parasitizing the boxes. And it was so cool. Wouldn't have been identified because if it weren't for chat.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it was all, and we still have the original clip, and I have photos too. It was like screen grabs of the stream. Really janky times. We had no alerts, no nothing, Nerdwino. It was terrible. And so then we were like, I think we can take it to the next level. Let's do some interactive science content as well. And so we started doing Science Saturdays. And so we had a name change. So we became Science with Balint, because Lita was not yet involved. And so I was like, all right, we'll talk first about fruit fly biology. Yeah. And we'll make an emote or something. Yeah. And it was truly awful. It was a PowerPoint, Nerdwino. as a PowerPoint presentation of like fruit flies. And
What else is a
Lita,
scientist to do but a PowerPoint presentation?
right? Lita watched it, and after the stream, she's like, "Honey, you know I love you." She's like, "But that was terrible." I'm like, "Yeah." I feel, she's like, "You want to do this, right?" I'm like, "Yes, I want to do it." And she's like, "All right, let's do this together." Okay, great. So we rebrand, we become Science Streams because Lita's on there now too, right? And we start doing the co-stream together. We started doing science deep dives on Saturdays. We started doing science news on Fridays, and then at the same time, we're doing the live leafcutter ant streaming as well.
I see.
And then
I see what you did here. You made Lita think it was her idea. Very clever.
no, she knows very well whose idea this was, where the madness originated from. But it just like organically started. And, we started like the first emotes we had in Arduino. It was the 3D so I started learning 3D modeling too during the COVID lockdown. And it was like, that's when we made Antonia, the 3D model leafcutter ant queen, who now is the face of the channel, right? And it's like, why did we make her? It was because people were scared about leafcutter ants and ants in general. It was like the attempt was to make her cute. And we were using it during our school visits. And I think we did a pretty good job on that front. But the first emote was I took the head of the 3D modeled ant and made it an emote. That does not work as an emote really now. So we made we started learning, like I started doing sketches outside. If folks remember, it was even my feet would even show up. I was sitting in a chair outside with a phone pointed at a notebook. It was truly a very scuffed, in the immortal words of Yoga Garrel, stream. But then we were getting more and more into it, and then I had a progress review in Arduino at work, and it was I had 3 papers in the pipeline, but I made no secret that I was working on this, like doing science art and school visits, and we were streaming the ants from the lab.
Yeah.
And I was told, so if you continue this, I'm going to blacklist your career so hard you're not going to get a job anywhere. Straight up. So when someone threatens me like that, I tend to get angry. And so I did it even more. This is all at the same time, like there's people in the lab who are actively sabotaging my experiments. Like I have video evidence now. There's people messing with my stuff. It was a whole
but I mean, was that sanctioned or not? Right? We don't know at this point.
We don't know. No, I mean, when I showed the video to the boss, she was like, "Yeah, it's fine."
Yeah.
Okay.
So just sorry to interrupt, but what would be a typical like load? How many papers would a postdoc be expected, or would you be expected to put out? What would be a good productivity in biology? I mean, I know what the number is in astronomy, but
so in graduate school, I had 10 first authors, and then in postdoc, I was gearing up for 3. It more depends on how many and what style you're doing. So it's like the lab I was in there would go gunning for like cell science or nature, but the idea was still like 3 top tier papers, because the only way you're going to get a job in academics is these really high ranking papers, and you have to have multiple of them.
Yeah.
So it was on track on that appropriate number. We had one on social setting of ants. So if they were isolated, they died faster than if they were socially housed. We were figuring out the genetics of it, and it was actually quite relevant because of the lockdown, right? And we were all socially isolated, and it turns out ants get depressed similar to humans, and they get more likely to be sick. It was very similar to human studies, and actually you can fix the effect by 3D printing them a friend, and coding the model with ant smell, which was really cool.
No way.
But yeah, so then I had a really bad health scare, and so I was like, well, I need to take some time. I've been running to myself in the ground, and I was told just to not bother coming back. So
wow.
Yeah, so we had like a month or 2 of recovery, and then I was like, well, soon enough I have to start searching for a job, and that wasn't going to be until the following April or something like that is when I would have needed a new start.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Let's just go full into this stream. we were still, even like those few month gap, we were still doing science use Fridays. We were doing science deep dives on Saturdays and the art on Sundays. And we started adding more and more to the point where we got 7 days a week.
So when this was 2020?
So that ended up in 2021.
2021.
Like fall of 2021.
Okay.
And so in 2022, like the very beginning of the year, it was like we even had a New Year's stream. We had a countdown of the best science papers of the year. I think we were up to like 6 streams a week at that day. And then January hits, we're like, all right, I'm doing 7. We're going full hog into this. Still having I'm still like finishing up publications on the side, but let's try it. And so we had, Lita and I did different theme nights. So we funded our first microscope so we can start doing microscopy Mondays, which we still do today.
That's my personal favorite, by the way.
I love looking under microscopes. Yeah. Seeing the world like through the lens is awesome, right? We did Tuesdays were game nights. We played retro games like Sonic and talked about Sonic Hedgehog signaling, which is important in developmental biology. And it's named after the video game character. Huh. And Lita's like awesome at retro Sonic. So she would crush it. She'd like fire up the Genesis and we'd hook it up the emulator and she would just go and we'd do that together. Wednesday was still a Whack-A Art Wednesday. Thursday, she would lead and break down sci-fi science, like Star Trek episodes. We had Discord movie nights where we watched Gattaca and break down the science of Gattaca. Fridays were still science news with deep dives on Saturday, which we did together along with science news, and we still had science art Sunday. My dad got really upset in December. He was like, "What are you doing your 3D modeling on?" I'm like, "We're doing it on the laptop." And he's like, "You're not using a drawing tablet?" "No." And he's like, "All right, your mother and I are sending you an early Christmas present." So he sent the drawing tablet.
Oh, that was nice.
Now hooked up, so allowing us to do like the emotes and the animations and whatnot. So we started slowly building up the stream. We got a second microscope and cameras and microphones and this green screen. All the fancy things were finally coming into play.
So during this time, was there a moment where you were like kind of felt like, oh, we're getting like it's happening? Or was it just a slow, steady, I hate to use the word grind, but grind?
You mean like for the partner push?
Not just that, but I mean getting to the point where you felt like people were engaged and you had a community and,
It was a very slow start. So, I mean, you can imagine if you're trying to dissect a scientific paper.
Oh, yeah.
And there's 3 people there, right? Like, it does not work easily if you're trying to tell people about science and there's no one really there. So what helped was Lita and I were there together. Yeah. So we made it a point to not tell each other what papers we wanted to talk about. And that way it was new to the other person. And that way we had each other's questions. And so the conversation still flowed. And then eventually people were very kind, like Danny with paleontologizing. I don't know, something about he decided he liked us. And so he would rate us on like Fridays and for science news. And people would be like, oh, these people are scientists and they talk science. Like, this is a different kind of vibe, but I'm okay with it. And so like we started building up the science circle on Twitch, meeting more people like Volcano Doc here in the chat.
Yeah.
Astro Canuck was actually one of my very first follows as well. Astro and Paleo I met around the same time. And so we started pulling in some of the existing science streamers and then meeting like some of the art streamers as well. Mm-hmm. But where it was like a really big turn that we had was when we met Derek and Devin of Moco Made last March, totally on accident. And like they were just so welcoming. They're like, "Oh, you're a scientist. What do you do?" And we're like, "Oh, we stream and we do art." And they showed off our stuff and they're like, "Oh, this is cool." And so then we just stuck around and we started meeting makers and crafters and other gamers and more artists. And I think as we started meeting more people, folks started to also think like, hey, science isn't just this insular concept. It's for everyone, which is the whole point of our channel. We didn't think stuff was really happening until maybe August, where it was like, because before then it was, it's low like, you try not to look at the numbers, but you eventually do. And we had dreams of hitting partner, but that was like, if you ask Lita, we thought it was like 2 or 3 years away.
Yeah.
We were not expecting just like this big growth curve out of nowhere. But I think we got really lucky in meeting some really, really great people who like already had an established audience as well that were not in science or were in science. Like, some reason Thug Shells really likes us. Who knows? Who knows why Thuggy decided?
Well, I would argue that you worked extremely hard for a partner. I mean, I was with you at TwitchCon, and I watched you working the room, and that yeah. I mean, people like you. You're very likable. You're great people, and you have a great stream. But you worked extremely hard to get to partner. It didn't just happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't an accident. We were live 7 days a week for most of that 2022 year.
Right.
All while, Leo was pregnant with our first kiddo, with like a difficult pregnancy, a new job. But it brings me so much joy when people ask questions and are curious, that it just fueled, like, it was a self-fueling thing.
Yeah.
Like, it still doesn't feel like work. I would love to make this a full-time job, right? And like, if we could live off of it, but I have no aspirations of that, because it's every partner I've met, for the most part, they still have jobs associated, right?
Of course,
like, it's not their full-time gig. It would be great if it could be, but it's more right now for bringing science to more people. And so yeah, we were, most days of the week. We've taken a little bit of a pull back to 5 because of the little one, which I know is disappointing, Nerduino. I know you're
I am not disappointed. I honestly, when you were streaming 7 days a week, even before the baby, I was like, man, this guy needs to just take his foot off the gas just a little bit. Like, this is kind of
my mods did convince me for that. A little bit of a pullback. My mods are incredible. They try to keep me honest with like the time, and like Balint, you have a new child, you need to also rest and like work, and so let's try to make streams 3 hours or something. And it's like 4 hours later, 5 hours later, Balint, uptime. Yeah, it's fine. Let's just finish up this thing. We're good, right, guys?
Yeah, exactly. So there is. So I did just want to ask one question. I know there was a question from Gwendolyn P a minute ago. We'll get to that. So there is a conspiracy theory circulating on the internet. You had said that if Ilona, as we know now, was born after you made partner, that chat would get to choose a middle name, and
before we made partner,
right? Before you made partner, and as it turns out, there was literally the next day when you got home. Now, there is a conspiracy theory that you paid certain people at Twitch off so that was actually delayed, so that she wouldn't be called Science Face as a middle name. Is there any truth to that rumor?
Not on my salary, no.
I'm just kidding.
That was the most shocking email I have ever seen. Like, we submitted our application on a Tuesday night in the delivery room. Okay, I thought it was going to be a minimum of 2 weeks, because the first time we submitted it was a 2.5 weeks for rejection. The second time we submitted, it was an hour.
I don't want to speak for Ashra Connect, but I think his experience was similar. I think the second time was much quicker than the first time, and it was a yes. But I might be wrong.
Yeah. Professor Canuck got that because he's Lego builder, astronomist, hot chip eater. He's very handsome. Of course, rapid fire, yes. But the second time was an hour, and I thought actually when we submitted, the web page said error. And so when we got the instant rejection, I was like, did they not get the application material, right? Because it was such a rapid rejection. And so we reached out, like, no, we got it. You just don't have enough yet. Again, like, because they wanted us like a little bit of a higher number. And I'm like, all right, so that's why we waited and pushed. And then, then the big push happened. We had little baby Ilona born. And then 2 days later, I get home and sit on the rocking chair with my new child, and all of a sudden my email pings, and there it is.
Yeah, that was fantastic. No, I'm really glad it happened that way. And I'm glad for Ilona that it happened that way too. Otherwise, who knows?
I mean, look, we would have happily. There were several really like the idea would have been we would have had a channel on our Discord.
Yeah.
Y'all can have suggested names, then we pick our 5 favorite, and then
Sure.
people vote on the 5.
No.
So then
I
maybe we.
the power of veto was always, it was clear that the power of veto was always
There was some, yeah, there was something there, but like baby with big baby face probably wasn't going to happen.
What? No, that was great. And so, just to get back to Gwendolyn P's question, she said, "How short or long were the first streams, and was it evenings or nights or daytime?"
So it was Mondays and Wednesdays were 3:30 to like 7. Evenings were originally we were doing later on Tuesday and Thursdays around 10:30. Because Lita called it insomnia science, so we went from like 10:30 to 2:30 in the morning. But then we started pushing it earlier, and by we I mean me. And then when Lita we started, the pregnancy started getting difficult, and I took over like full time, and Lita's doing a bunch of behind the scenes stuff, like the whole website and like merch stuff. Now it's Smike's helping as well, so that was all of her stuff, but. It then turned into like 9:30, 9 o'clock to 2, 3 in the morning, even with the job going. Science News was always at 9 on Fridays. The deep dives on Saturday were usually around 3:30 start time till around 8. And then we'd go grab dinner and have date night. And then Sundays were usually like 3:30 to 9:30. So it started very rapidly becoming like 5, 6, 7 hour streams.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Every day.
Yeah, I mean, with two full-time jobs, that's crazy, and a baby on it.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: if you could go back and give yourself, the new streamer Balint, one piece of advice, what would you tell yourself? Now, knowing now everything that you know.
I think have fun and unapologetically be you. The very first stream I did, I put on a button down and try to be much more serious.
Do we have this? Is there like footage of this or no?
There is a clip.
We'll have to see.
There is a clip of me in the button. It was a little bit fun of a button down. It had like a silly design on it, but like it was still a button down, right? And it was just like. It was so cringy. It was so very cringy. Like honestly, Lita helped with loosening me up, where it was like the derails, like take the derails in stride.
Yeah. That
was the biggest thing. Like have fun with it. If there's a question, let's derail and jump to everything. And now we derail all the time. And that I think like not being afraid to derail and going off script was very important to begin with. That and like. I think what's made a difference and people really enjoy and have fun is all the little animations and characters we now have.
Yeah.
I didn't start doing that until after TwitchCon, but I feel like that was like a little extra layer of fun for people to make it more interactive and silly. Like you can not only derail the science, but you can also derail me by throwing eggs at my face or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. No, and it's your art as well, right? Which makes it even more cool.
Yeah, I was like, well, why not? Like, I had to learn how to animate, but it ended up being worth it, I think.
So what do you think the biggest challenges are now, like for new streamers starting up? If you got, obviously there's people in chat maybe who are thinking about streaming or they're streaming, they just made affiliate or they haven't quite got there yet. Or what do you think are the hardest things as a brand new streamer? Other than just, like you said, I mean, be yourself and have fun, because trying to be somebody else is just freaking exhausting and people will figure it out eventually. So, yeah.
I think part of it is still difficult even for partner streamers, which is growth. Like, how do you reach new people while keeping old people and just like making it a fun and welcoming environment? I think the growth is super difficult. You see people who've been streaming for years and they have an absurd number of followers, but then also for years where it's a really small number. And so like, how do you find communities that you're interested in wanting to join? So not being there because you're looking for growth, but that you're legitimately interested in. So like making the time to find these new communities that you can be part of, and then having some like associated growth with that. I think, especially for science content, right? There's no money in it for us. Like, don't tell anyone, but right, we're not getting sponsored by Adidas or Nike right now.
Wait, what?
I know. I don't know what Astro Canuck's been telling you, but
He's been. I've been drinking the Kool-Aid. I thought this was like the path to riches here.
Yeah.
Gosh darn it.
Definitely.
So in that vein, how do you feel about streaming to multiple platforms and that kind of thing, like Kick and all these other new platforms that are around?
Yeah, so Kick is a really fascinating one because it just popped up, and the only real difference is you make a bigger cut, but it is extremely shady. There's no moderation settings, and is pornography on there. We are very family friendly, and we try not to be on those kinds of platforms, especially without any moderation. Like, we've had hate raids in the past. Luckily, we have SiriBot, and we have all these like protective measures, and Twitch has like the shield mode to protect the community from all these things coming in. And so
maybe
like
YouTube then. So for example,
yeah. So why Twitch? There's that level of interaction where you can ask questions. Isn't really like, that's more of a YouTube. I feel like is more of a podcasty place, right? Like, here are pre-processed videos that you can have and you can look at, and that's great. And there are live streams you can do, but like Andrew was saying in the chat, there is really low level of moderation there.
Yeah.
And like I would love to believe that people aren't going to come in and be like, you suck. But they do. It usually ends up being about my hair. It usually starts on my hair.
Actually, I have to tell you, I'm not sure if you were in Jern's stream earlier, but there was a little talk about the hair flick.
I saw the GIF. But it was, at least Jern says it nicely.
I like to do that myself, occasionally, but it's hard to see on camera. It's yeah.
It's the lens.
Yeah, it's the lens. Yeah.
Because in person, I was able to comb your hair. Remember on the beach? It was beautiful.
Right.
But yeah, I think YouTube's a great platform if you want to like look up something to learn really quickly. We dissect videos on there, but for interaction, it's really not good. I've tried doing I know the Sammy board that we have that does all the redemptions can talk to YouTube, but it's just not as streamlined of an integration. So like, to make it that audience experience really exciting, it just isn't there. And then Facebook, we looked at Facebook Live too, but I don't know who uses Facebook anymore really for it seems like Facebook is such an echo chamber that you either capture those who are already loving science, or you're going to capture the ones that hate science and you're never going to change their mind.
Yeah, and I think I believe Astro Connect got his start on Facebook, but has subsequently moved it over to Twitch. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely interesting. Like you said, there's a lot of platforms with different splits for the creators and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, and there are plenty of people I've spoken to who are like, well, I'm going to this platform because they don't have moderation, and I don't care, and I think people should be able to say whatever they want, and I can handle it, and I'll just tell them, whatever. It's like, okay, but I don't know. For me, that doesn't,
sure, you can handle it, and you have thick skin, but if you have community members in who don't feel safe,
100%, yeah,
then it's not really worth it, right? And so I think it's just like the Kick thing. I went and reserved an account for us so no one can take our name.
Right.
But that's about where that ended.
So if you were looking into the magic Jern ball for the future of like streaming and science streaming and Twitch, but the broader streaming community, where do you think things are headed like over the next few years? What do you think's how are things gonna change?
So I think with more platforms coming up, there'll be more competition. So there will be, adaptations on all these platforms. Presumably, whoever makes it most interactive will win out of all of it. It's hard to know which one's going to take over, but given how long Twitch has been here, I think the safe money's on Twitch and the power of Amazon. I think it's just going to be going more and more towards interactive. Like, I know when we went to TwitchCon, they talked a lot about building new interactive tools where you can click on the screen and interact more with the streamer and like get a real feel for like just higher level of interaction.
Do you mean like the TwitchCon 7 months ago when they were talking about these tools that we still haven't got those tools?
Well, right, but you know, you said in the future.
Yeah, I know, I get it, I understand. I'm just, you know.
But I think it's going towards that direction. It also feels more and more like a TV show, right? Like it feels like we all have, like that's the beauty of Twitch, right? It's all like public access TV
100%,
and production,
yeah.
and it's you know, you're not only a streamer and a scientist, you're also a lighting effects manager, you're an audio manager,
yeah.
You're a background creator, you're an overlay creator, you get the emotes, you get the drop game, you get all these extra things. So I think
stickers, patches, mugs, t-shirts.
yeah, I think the divide of what makes a good stream versus what doesn't is going to keep growing, right? So it's probably going to be more like moving towards that more polished, produced look, just because the tech's getting cheaper, right? Eventually, computer tech always go down in price,
right?
So I think it's going to be more and more like tech savvy tools that are coming into play. At least that's usually where these things go. And yeah, you have the bees too, so you're also a beekeeper.
This is true. And I have 3 beehives right now. Maybe you haven't been following the saga of the bees, but we had swarms. We had swarms because I mismanaged the hive.
Oh no! Oh, no.
So now we have 3. We have 2.5. We have 1 strong swarm that I think is going to be fine, and then we have another very little colony that swarm. Anyway. Yeah. So what? And so that's the future of Twitch. What about the future of science and the channel? What's coming up?
There are dreams, Nerduino. There are dreams.
Tell us all your dreams.
What?
Tell us all of your dreams.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, we want a second child, but okay. Anyway,
I can't help you with that one.
Dang it. So the eventual goal is to be Twitch ambassador.
And can you remind us what's the requirements for Twitch ambassador?
So there's an unofficial viewer count. There's the potential of it not mattering. There's the potential of it mattering. It just depends on who you talk to. So the unofficial rough number that they want is about 100 for it. 100 concurrent average viewers. On top of that, you have to have a mission statement that the platform can get behind. So there's, for example, a streamer who's blind who reviews accessibility of video games that he plays. Like that's one example of a Twitch ambassador. There's another one who puts light onto drag queens. There's another one who does retro video games and community building with like focusing on mental health. There's another one that does plays all video games with a DDR pad with their feet to demonstrate accessibility in video games. So our goal would be bringing science to more people, and I think our community feels like there is a potential for that to be a worthwhile endeavor for Twitch. I feel like educational content, if you look at the current lineup of ambassadors, there's none. There's no educational content on that list. They do have one. The requirement is you already have to be partnered to apply.
Sure.
And so there's a small pool of educational streamers anyway as partners. So that'll be the next step that we go for. The catch is the application is if you don't make it, you're not told you didn't make it. You just don't get an answer, and it's a rolling application. So every year there's about, I think, 20 or 40 new people that are admitted to the program, and so it's just.
And how many are there? Like, how many Twitch ambassadors are there in existence?
So I believe it's a yearly appointment, and then you're.
Oh, for 1 year. I see.
Yeah, and then but you still get to maintain that status, so you get to work more directly with Twitch long term. And bring special events to Twitch and the platform, which for us would be great because it'd bring more science to more people.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
On top of that, we're working on a children's book, The Adventures of Antonia. We're also working on a children's video game with the lovely Manadono, who's a streamer here on Twitch. So he's using our 3D assets that we've created to generate an open world video game where you can explore a colony as Antonia the Ant, which is, hitting up certain, again, kids. We want it to be on the Nintendo Switch and Steam store. And And like Chad said, like if we had something like a kids show, or that would be great. We eventually are going to make YouTube shorts, kind of like in the vein of SciShow, to further expand on that platform. Currently, we have our friend Andrew and Debs doing a lot of YouTube work. They're uploading like the edited science streams videos just to put the word out there of what we do and who we are, but eventually creating content there. Continuing, we do school visits as it is. We got our first one coming up in May, actually, since the baby was born. So where we teach kids about the science behind what we do. We donate amber samples to them, 3D models from the 3D printer. When we do virtual school visits, we always donate these things to them as well. We also give the kids stickers. So
is that just something that you reach out to the schools individually, or are you a part of an organization that is like a mailing list that the schools know about for people who?
So it's just us.
Yeah.
And now word of mouth has more people communicating that, hey, you guys should know about these people. Like we had a pop-up event in town this Saturday, and a librarian, the library right across the street, was like, hey, what do y'all do? And then she's like, can I get a card? And so it looks like we might go visit a library and do a talk there. So it's a lot of us doing the legwork on that too. Nice. Twitter has actually been helpful getting the word out on that.
Well, that's good. So she asked for a card and she left plastered in 15 stickers. Is that what happened?
Well, given that we don't have a card yet.
I mean, who does though, right? Well, the cool kids don't have cards. They think cards are for like old fuddy-duddy boomers, and you know.
We really need a card.
Yeah, I know. At some point, you just need a card.
But we did give her a sticker and a bookmark, so
she'll be back.
That has our website on it. We're like that. There's something there. There you go.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love the education stuff. The school education stuff. I think that's.
Yeah, we've gotten parents. Sometimes it's the parents of the kids who will make a Twitch account and will come by and be like, "Hey, my kid's watching." You know, because we tell them like the Amber we identify together as a stream.
Yeah.
And like so that is like an extra level of interaction, which is a lot of fun. And now that we're saving the VODs and uploading them, it's like we could even direct the kids like this piece that we're donating to the classroom today was on this stream that we identified. We could even go that level.
That's
which I think would be really cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yes, no, your stream is one of the few that I let Minnie know watch, and she's excited to watch as well. And,
we try to be family friendly. The worst, we'll push up PG-13, but beyond that, it's the whole point is to make it fun and accessible to everyone, right? Without it being too loosey-goosey.
New gen prints up one card with a QR code. Do you mean like this, Uncle Bill? Like that kind of QR code right there? Is that what the cool kids are doing? I wish I'd known that before I went to TwitchCon.
I don't know. I got the special edition card of that.
I will tell you that I am a cheapskate, and the QR code, since I haven't given the cards out, does no longer connect to the Twitch channel because they wanted like $20 or something to continue. Anyway, sorry. So if chat does chat have any more questions? That's everything that I had in mind to talk to science about. I don't know if chat has any more questions. Anything you want to know? Any of the ins and outs? Nothing too controversial, please. but yeah, if you have any questions for science, feel free to spit them out. Otherwise, we'll probably start wrapping stuff up. It's late on the East Coast.
Well, wasn't chat saying that I don't sleep?
It is true that you don't sleep. Yeah, you I was glitching, Uncle Bill. Sure. Okay. Oh, let me ask you. I did have one other question for you. So, how do you were talking a bit about this, but how do you deal? Do you have? Obviously, everyone has trolls. How do you deal with trolls? Do you just the mods just ban? I know you have great mods. They just kind of get banned and that's the end of it, or do you engage with these people or give them a chance, or what's the deal?
Depends on what they come in and say. Yeah. I think the first time, right? If you come in and you're just insulting. Right, there's just no place for that. I'm not going to accept. While I can take certain flavors of hate speech, I don't need my community to do that. Right, so you're gone. But we've had people who've come up and said, vaccines are a lie. That isn't necessarily an insta ban. That is, we will actively try to be like, okay, well, why do you think that? and let me explain to you like what we take on our site. Because I think one of my old boss was like this. She would say that people are too stupid to learn about science. And I feel like that mentality is why we have distrust in science. And so someone coming in and saying science is stupid, it could be because that's what they've gone through their lives, is like you've had rude people who've put you down because you're asking a question. Let's change the dialogue. Why do you think that?
Yeah.
And there have been several instances where it's like, well, I think because it changes, I've heard it changes your DNA, the vaccine's like, well, actually, let's pull up a video and let's draw out the pathway and explain like why that doesn't happen. And then my favorite is when sometimes it starts and they start asking questions. And like, wait, how does that happen? And then it's all of a sudden like, all right, you've flipped them.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen, right? Sometimes they'll be like, well, I have my own opinion, and be like, you know what, that's okay. But if you don't engage, you're never going to make any progress.
Sure.
Right? So if someone comes in saying something like that, it's not an instant ban. Let's try to see if we can chat it out. And you don't have to agree at the end, but you can admit that there is a second viewpoint. If it's, something terrible, then you're gone. If you're being very disruptive, but not necessarily horrific, then, you might get a whisper from a mod or a timeout. But it's usually how it works. Sometimes there's a new chatter, and if it's a little bit shady, I always have to click on the name and see when the account was created.
Right.
If it's like a month old, you're like, maybe. We did have actually this gentleman came into our stream a few months ago, and he said it was this long message about how he wants to work with us at this company. And one of the mods nerfed the comment right away because it read just like this, want to be famous comment.
Oh yeah.
But I actually had talked to the guy earlier that day on Discord, and I was so squirrely about this guy because it was like there's no way this is real. And so I was like, I want LinkedIn's, I want websites, I want documents that prove, because he was like, we work with companies and create SciComm toys, and we want you to be a consultant. I'm like, no way this is real. This cannot be real, right? Now we're contracted by these people, and we're gonna be working on Star Wars SciComm toys.
Nice.
I can't say any more about that because we are under an NDA.
You signed an NDA.
As soon as a toy gets released, we'll be able to say yeah, we worked on that. And so it's Star Wars themed science toys.
Nice.
That Lee and I are going to be consultants. Like the paperwork's real. We've signed the paperwork. It's official. We have our first big group meeting not next week. No, I think next week actually.
That's awesome. That's great news.
But that I thought was a troll. And I thought I have 100% this person's stealing my social security number. You did not ban them, Smikes. Their child watches with them. But that was the one with what is this? But turned out to actually be a good thing. So there's unique. You're gonna meet unique people on many different avenues, and that was all through because of Twitch. And I was like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah, you never know who's watching, right?
Yeah.
Now we know why he chose Star Wars. Exactly, Bill. That's what I thought when he said it as well. I'm like, yeah.
No. I love Star Wars for a lifetime.
Actually, so I had another question about trolls. Just us talking about that and the crazy people. I shouldn't call them crazy people, but the fringe theorists. Did you have so the University of Illinois? We had a few people who were always writing us letters and sending us emails, and they had the latest theory that was going to be the new gut. Did you guys have that in biology as well, or no?
There were a lot of theories like that were, especially with COVID, there were a lot of people coming in with these different theories, and some were very, overtly or not so overtly racist, right? That were coming in as well.
Oh, wow.
So that was the biological side of things, where it was, they were news articles coming out, but it was not accurate, right? It was the crazy time news.
Yeah.
But as for like biology too, there's the worst thing we actually have is science Twitter. I'm sure y'all know about Twitter. We use Twitter all the time. So does Nerduino. But there's a lot of scientists on the platform that use it as an echo chamber, and a lot of it is if they don't like your work, they will just come and harass you. So we've actually had to like. There was one in particular we had to put out a restraining order against because he would just kept like coming out after our papers and whatnot and just like nerfing all over it. And eventually be like, you need to cool it, dude. But that's like this guy would go after a lot of people, a lot of young scientists in neuroscience because he's like, if I didn't come up with this idea, then no one did. And so like there's a lot of like internal misinformation spread as well.
That's wow. That's yeah, I haven't experienced that, but I mean on small scales, but I don't know if that. Yeah, I'm sure it happened.
Oh, and I saw Twitch Addict asked if we do visits in Ohio. Twitch Addict, we've done as far as Hawaii on the west, and as the east, we've done. I think it was Norway was the farthest on that side. So the virtual visits, like we're not limited by where we go. In person might be limited, but
science also wants you to know that in-person visits to Hawaii would also be fine if travel expenses were provided.
It would be totally fine, but no, we don't charge anything for our school visits. The whole point of it is to make science accessible, and I'm not going to put up a paywall.
Sure, 100%.
I think when we've gotten a few times offered an honorarium, we were just like, can you just give it to the classroom?
Yeah.
Because it's not enough to buy like a dinner with, and so then just these schools are so lowly funded. It's like use it to buy new pencils or anything like
crazy.
Yeah.
Well, the schools, yeah. I mean, the parents buy the pencils, as it turns out. Ask me.
No, yeah, but like,
you know what I mean? Like it's crazy how underfunded. Well, we don't need to get into that anyway. But so Gigantor says, do you have thoughts about turning lurkers into more active channel members?
I think what's helped the microscopes helped us a lot. Like seeing stuff and how it works, I think is a big thing. So like when we're chatting to make it more interactive, that's why like when Nerduino and I were at TwitchCon, we were asking people like if they'll have tools like for Twitch that you can click on the screen and ask questions, right? Like I know Astro Canuck, when he does the night sky, it would be great if there was something that you can click on and it'd be very streamlined and interactive. Like even if you're lurking, like, oh, I wonder what that is, and just like being very visual. A lot of that has helped us too, like the redeems and the animations. It's like people like the chaos, and it's like getting that out of there, like making it so okay, it's not like if it's science, it's hard because if it's super serious, no one's gonna ask a question. If I'm sitting here and talking about the amoeba and the plasmodium and all that, right? No one's gonna ask a question. Everyone's gonna zone out. But making it fun and interactive might make a lurker come out and say something, but also having an environment where questions are accepted. So like we nerf any comment that says I'm sorry on our channel, because especially if it's like I'm sorry for asking a question, right? Like do not tell me that,
right.
Okay? Because I'm sure someone was thinking that question, and that question could lead to a different question, and there's no sorries for questions. And the reason I'm so hard on that is because when I was in 7th grade, I started asking questions from our biology professor about conjoined twins because I didn't understand how their vasculature system worked. Like their both hearts pump the blood. Like I didn't understand how it worked, right? And I was curious. And the next day she was like, I've decided that there is never going to be any more questions that are off topic. And so then I stopped asking questions for the next like 8 years until I'm undergrad, because I was like, well, no one cares about my questions because everything could be somewhat off topic, right? But I think making it that kind of environment where people hear and see, like I think for me, I'm big on visual learning. So like drawing on the tablet or videos, and like let's just get like someone there is excited about the topic. Let's show that excitement, and maybe someone will then be comfortable in asking a question. So if you're lurking but you hear a topic that you're maybe interested in, maybe you'll be more likely to ask that question and feel comfortable doing it. I know like I get nervous asking questions, still like on a like Astro stream, right? Astro will be talking about the astrophotography, and I'll be like, oh, I'm really curious as to something really basic here, but he's made it like that's welcoming enough where I could be like, what kind of lens are you using and why does that work? And he'll be like, yeah, let me tell you. And it's so I think it's the personality of the streamer that really makes it accessible to ask questions. Or like same with Danny, and like he does evolutionary biology and paleontology, so I also do evolutionary biology. But I'm like, so he might think I'm an idiot if I'm asking this question. He never is going to think I'm an idiot, so I'll go ahead and ask. Like he will answer, and someone might find it interesting, and then we move on, and that's how we got to do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. You have to engage people, right? And whatever way you can do that. And there really literally are no silly questions.
Yeah, the only thing we actively avoid is while I know science is inherently political because of funding situations, we try to never politicize the science. Like, that is immediately shut down because we try to very much focus on what is the raw science behind it and just curiosity for the sake of curiosity and not selling it up with anything else. And I think that's important.
Yeah,
I've seen some streams where it's very politicized and it becomes an echo chamber, and then people outside of that echo chamber don't feel welcome, and that's not the point.
No, I mean, I think that you just have to follow the facts, right? And obviously, you can argue, you can have an educated argument. Well, generally speaking, you can have an educated argument with people about facts. But as long as that there's really no politics involved. I mean, you can argue and say, oh, the research was paid by whoever they were biased or whatever. Okay, maybe, but ultimately, when there's 15 papers that all say the same thing, it's pretty hard to sort of argue, and that's why I try and keep it pretty. And I get people occasionally especially on the climate stuff and whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Or even, I mean, the NASA stuff too. I haven't seen it on yours, but just at other places, like where does this money go and why do we give this money? And like that's where it goes. And it's like, okay, well, let's we can have a discussion about that, but let's focus instead on this cool science part. And let's take that out of the equation. I think that's an important thing to remember and make sure we do.
I had somebody actually that started on the NASA thing about the money, and I actually told them how much money there was involved, which is minuscule compared to every other budget in the federal government. And then it was like, wait, that's all? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. It's like $20 billion for the whole thing. It's not. It doesn't even register. So I think people also have misconceptions about a lot of science and stuff. So.
Well, I mean, there was the classic example, right, of using fruit flies for mating, and why is there money going towards this? And so instead of talking about that side of things, I always make sure that if we're talking about a fruit fly paper, I always try to put it in the context of, okay, why does this matter to us? And so you inherently address the possible question that there might be of why is there money going to this? But you don't frame it that way. Instead, you're like, well, this is relevant to humans because, like, let's look at the genetics and the conservation of genetics, or the evolutionary biology side of things, or those kinds of situations. I feel like are what you can pivot that argument and somehow get people excited about the scientific concept of it.
Sure. All right, we have one more question from chat, and then I'm going to let you go and crash because I'm sure, despite appearances, you have to be exhausted. So Ninja Loppy said, which streaming skill did you find the hardest to develop?
Talking.
That seems surprising, but go ahead.
That's what I'm trying to say here. Right? When there's no one there.
Oh yeah.
Talking to yourself. That to me was the hardest thing. Like, even, and you might be like, what do you mean? Like, even nowadays, right? If I'm doing an art piece, sometimes the chat's not always hopping. And so it's like, maybe he's sputtering nonsense, but it's usually somewhat related. And we keep going on that front. Like, but that was a skill I did not have at the beginning, where it was like, there was a lot of awkward pauses, a lot of awkward silences. I didn't know how to fill the silence because I was like, it was the difficulty of getting over the idea of I don't have anything worthwhile to say. But then it was like, you know what? I can still talk about the science and we can frame stuff. And then, it was like connecting with chat and getting to know people and asking the questions. And it's like, then you have regulars and I could be like, oh, one of them P's here. She loves the mummy. Exactly. That's great. And so then we can, but that did not come at first. That was a really, really difficult hurdle to get over. And it's one where I actually was watching several streamers and wondering like how they did it. Like we were in the same boat in terms of size. And it was like there was one streamer, she's a gamer and an artist. Her name was Polyphemius. And if there was one person in the chat or 20, she'd comment on the game either way, and you could lurk even. Like she was such a good commentator, whatever she was doing.
Yeah.
That it was like you don't even need anyone there, and it was like that skill and learning that skill and how to do it. Because like if someone comes by and they're there for a second, and and they're like checking out the stream, if you just sit there silently and watching the game, you might not want to say hi and interrupt them. Right? At least I got that feeling. So then I might just move on. But if they're already chatting, you feel more comfortable. And it was that hurdle of getting over. That to me was the most difficult.
Okay, that's interesting. I found that quite hard too. And I think because I watched, I'm sure everybody is the same. We all watched a bunch of YouTube videos like on how to stream and all this stuff, and with big streamers who were talking about it. And it was, I don't remember who it was. It was somebody that streams Pokemon. I don't remember, but anyway, she said that she never leaves more than 10 seconds of empty airtime, and that's like 10 seconds to her feels like an eternity. It's more like 5, and she just says something, and I think it goes back to what you said before, where people feel like they have to put out this sort of persona or something they're not, and they're worried if they keep talking, people are going to get to know them. Like people might actually get to like see the real me, and I'm terrified by that. Right? It's like so.
But
yeah.
I think it's at the end of the day, we don't care. Like, your content might be the original hook, but people don't necessarily stay for that. People stay for you.
Right.
And understanding that was a hurdle, right? Because I'm like, what am I? I'm funny looking. I got a stupid name. I hate the sound of my voice. My hair's goofy, even though I do love my hair. Why would anyone want to stay and get to know me? And then it was like just growing in that self-confidence of like, okay, people are still staying and they're getting to know us and they're asking about us.
Right.
And it was like, I still don't understand fully. It's like, are you sure you care about and want to be here for us? Like, what do you mean? And it's a really humbling feeling that people care. But I want to make sure we always reciprocate. I always want to know the people in my chat. I want to know that Big Gamey is the world's greatest father. I want to know how talented of an artist Mike's is, and so is Gwendolyn. I want to know how fit and technically savvy Andrew is. Like all these people, I wanted to get to know them.
Yeah. Well, it's a community, right? And you want to
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us are talented enough where we just do something, and without building a community, you're gonna be like monumentally successful.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are a few, but right, this especially with the sciences, right? I have no idea how we would do it if we didn't build a community around it.
No, there's no way. You'd be talking to yourself, basically. Still, after how many years? Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was the realization that if you're not yourself, you might as well be yourself. And if it doesn't work out, okay, then maybe you aren't that interesting, or whatever it is. But at least you're being yourself, and 100 times out of 100 is not. You're not going to end up. People are going to be interested, and there's so many people on Twitch. You're always going to find a community, and
yeah. And if you're not yourself, what if one day you slip up?
Right.
And then you let the real you shine, and then everyone's like, this isn't who I'm here for. And it's just like, just be yourself. Like there is, it's like Lita always says, everyone's beautiful to somebody. Your personality will be beautiful to someone. You don't have to fake it. It drives me so far up the wall when people post like those fake engagement things on Twitter. Like,
oh yeah.
Like, which of your favorite streamers would you share a pillow with? You don't actually care. You're just looking for this like fake engagament, and it's like,
none of them. That's my pillow. Get off.
Exactly. Yeah. We're Lita, obviously.
No.
Right.
Not even.
But it's that honesty that I feel like is lacking in some people, and it's just be yourself. And I know it's scary to be yourself, but at the end of the day, that'll be the healthiest mindset to be, is just be comfortable in your own skin. And if someone's like, who do you want to be in the world? Just me. I'm fine being me.
That's a great advice. Great advice. And on that note, I mean, I don't think we can give the people any better advice than that. Be yourself. And unless anyone has any last minute questions, but I think we're gonna let Science go get some rest. I really appreciate you coming on, Science. Thank you, my friend. It's if you're not following Science after all this, I don't know how you could possibly not be, but go drop Science the follows. Love your streams. Looking forward to seeing what comes in the next few months, in the next years, and watching Ilona grow up and seeing Lita back on stream as well. That's gonna be fun.
Agreed. Thank you.
More regularly.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for like us meeting at TwitchCon and being so cool and just like becoming. I think ever since we met at TwitchCon, we became like really rapid, fast friends, and